Welcome to Stoked, the podcast that helps adventure elopement photographers hit six figures and beyond in their businesses without hustling on social media. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become an elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on helping you do the same. Are you ready to start booking out your calendar with dream couples in breathtaking locations and feeling genuinely stoked about your elopement photography business, life, and bank account? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail, and today I have a very special episode. I have a guest, Rose Groves. She is a Colorado and destination elopement photographer. She has traveled all over the place. I can't wait for you to hear her story, and she is a new mom. So we're going to talk about destination travel. We're going to talk about motherhood, and I'm just so excited. Welcome to the podcast, Rose.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy you are here. So let's jump right into sharing your backstory because it's really cool. And you've literally just traveled all over the place. So we need to talk about that. So what is your story? How did you get into elopement photography?
Yeah. Well, I guess if you throw it way back,
Yeah.
the sort of love for travel started, I think, at birth. I was born overseas. I was born in Kenya, and my parents are both like geographers, scientists. So the love of the earth and like seeing how the world happens was always there. So we lived in 4 different countries and traveled constantly. And so when we landed in the States when I was in high school, that was kind of my introduction to life in America. That was like the young Rose. And then the adult Rose really started. I went to college, I did political science of all things, and then kind of was figuring out my life. So I went to South Korea and taught English for a year and, seeing how other cultures embrace families and all this stuff. That's always something that's been brewing. So, gosh, yeah, I went to South Korea for a year, did some traveling in Asia then. And right after I finished, though, I pretty much jumped right into grad school. So I did go to grad school. It was kind of a hybrid program. It was like a behavioral economics program. And I think I was raised to kind of pursue a graduate program, like no questions. There's no other option. Please go to grad school. So
Yeah.
I found this program in Denver that I was excited about and went there. But, I'd always also had a camera. Like when I was teaching English in South Korea, I photographed a Korean wedding. Expats would hire me to like take engagement pictures or just like do small things like that. So it was like always around. I never thought that I would in one day have a full-fledged business with it. It's like, I was like, oh, it's an art degree. Like, what am I supposed to do with it? Kind of thing. But then I can really kind of fold it all into the COVID experience, which I think a lot of people had that what the hell moment when COVID happened. We're like, what are we doing with our lives here? I just moved back from actually working in Brussels, and I was like, I hated every minute of, not every minute, but it was a tough job. I was working with the EU and I was a research fellow there. And I moved home after that ended, and I was just like, applying for work, applying for jobs. And like, what if I just did this? And my dad's an entrepreneur too. So like he kind of was helpful in a lot of ways, but I was like, all right, let's go. And then I married a man from Alaska, which helped tremendously for all things Alaska, because I just absolutely adore that state and everything up there. So yeah, it just kind of like progressed from, this degree program that wasn't working to being like, oh, well, you know what? I should mention the true sort of moment was when I worked for an organization called Photographers Without Borders. This was in 2017, and I went to South Africa, and I basically just was their documentary photographer for 2 months. And I was trying to marry my economics degree with photography and storytelling, but that was really hard, especially once COVID happened. So I kind of dropped the economics part and just pushed the photography part, and I eloped. So I was like, wow, I can do this.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like so many of us have pursued these like fancy jobs where it's like, oh, I work for the EU in Brussels, and like, oh, I'm an emergency vet. And it's like, actually, this sucks.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a photographer.
gonna do what makes me happy and
Yeah.
create my own future kind of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It takes a lot of courage, right? So you met your
Yeah.
husband, you fell in love, you eloped. He's from
Yeah.
Alaska. So you're shooting Colorado elopements. And then the natural progression is to start shooting Alaska elopements. How did that transpire?
Well, so he, he and I would go up to, even when we were dating, we'd go up to his hometowns in Juneau. And I was just like, man, if people think Colorado's beautiful, like Alaska's, I mean, you guys eloped there, right? There's
Yeah,
a
we
reason
did.
it's so
It's
special.
so cool.
Yeah. And so I think, like a lot of the ways that business has really taken off for me was through styled shoots. And the same was with your Iceland retreat, frankly.
Hmm.
Like if you get the content, you meet people who are local, you start to figure out your way around. It's so much easier to talk to potential, clients about how that works.
Hmm.
And so the combination of just spending time up there and then finding friends and people to model for me was really the sort of kickstart to a lot of that. And now it's like Alaska's almost 50% of my work is Alaska based. And this year was quite heavy. Like the density of it was probably too much with a baby,
Hmm.
but we did it.
Yeah. So you just got back from a trip with your 4-month-old little girl named
Yeah.
Mika. And so you've just been traveling with her and your husband and Woody, right? And shooting these elopements. So how's that been
Yeah.
going?
The first one, so I went back, I shot my first wedding here in Denver, actually, 5 weeks postpartum. And I would say that that was probably aggressive. I think there's a lot of things that you don't know what it's like to have a kid until you have a kid. And so, of
Hmm.
course, the mental phase of like, oh, I can totally photograph after 5 weeks. And then the reality kicks in. But I will say that the nice thing about we went up to Alaska in early July, and because we know people there, it was nice to kind of land in what felt like a second home.
Hmm.
So like me going out to work, I felt much more comfortable knowing that he and her like have a car and they
Hmm.
can go do things and everything's very safe and
Yeah.
familiar.
Hmm.
So Alaska was a good test run. We also learned the hard way about how to pack child on an airplane because like we like rented a Ford Escape up there. So,
Hmm.
small SUV, whatever. And like with all of our stuff, it like barely fit. So like me and Woody and Mika and all of our stuff barely fit in this car. So
Yeah.
it was a test run because then we left for England and Iceland right after that. And so we like completely shed a whole bag and like just really slimmed down all of our packing. So that was a good experience to be able to be like, oh my gosh, there's so much shit. And then be like, okay, let's not bring that much stuff this next time.
Man.
But yeah, and the safety was a big thing for us too, like because she was so little when we first
Hmm.
flew. She was only 3 months old, so it was like, how do you make sure that she's vaccinated and
Hmm.
how do you prepare for emergency situation, like all of these things.
Yeah.
And I have this vivid memory. So when we were dating, when we were dating, we flew down to Peru and we took this bus up north to this little town called Juarez. And it's like this hiking in the Andes, beautiful. And
Hmm.
we're sitting on the bus. We had been dating like 4 months. And I see this woman, she was really a girl. She was a teenager. She gets on the bus. She's pregnant and she's got a toddler on her hip. And it was like a 15-hour bus ride. And whenever I feel like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard, I can't do this, I think of that girl and I'm like, if she can do this like by herself,
Yeah.
take a bus ride with, all of these things, like, oh yeah, we can do this. We totally got this. So it's just a mental like shift of like, stop panicking,
Hmm.
just do it.
Yeah. People are traveling with their kids all the time. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you'll figure it out. Hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
That's important. That's how I like when I was transitioning from being an emergency vet to being a photographer and like, your mind's like, what if it doesn't work out? What if worst case scenario happens and all that stuff? And I would tell myself if I could amputate a dog's leg, which I did all the time
Oh my
because I
God.
did a
Yeah.
lot of surgeries, I'm like, if I can amputate a
Yeah.
leg, I can figure out how to run a business, like if
Yeah.
I can take out a spleen or perform a C-section, I can figure out how to run a business. And so, yeah, those mindset shifts
Totally.
are really important. So, yeah, so you
Yeah.
just got back because you shot an elopement in Iceland and England, and then you just got
Yeah.
back and then you're heading back to Iceland.
Yes. We landed last Saturday and we
Hmm.
leave on Saturday. So
Dang.
like all of July and August is definitely a whirlwind. But
Hmm.
I'm starting to get excited. I obviously love Iceland. We're going to drive the ring road after the elopement next week. And so I'm pretty excited to see some of that too. I've never done it. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never done it either, even though we've been to Iceland many times. But yeah, it's like I don't want to rush that. I want
no,
to
I know.
I want to
Take your
savor it.
time with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, we're having to travel a little differently too. Like Woody and I would probably stay in like really cheap, like just let's just get the bed and that's it. But
Hmm.
now with her, it's like, okay, we probably need to have a place to put her crib and maybe it, shouldn't be
Hmm.
so dingy. Although Iceland's pretty like, I wouldn't say that there's a lot there that would qualify as like grungy. It's a pretty
Hmm.
new developed place to visit. So
Yeah.
but yeah, so she's coming. Woody is able to come in part because like Colorado just as of this year has a new law about family leave. So he's being awesome and coming with me and making life a lot easier in that sense. And
I love
it's,
that.
yeah, it's just different. I think, when I found out I was pregnant, I like, well, first of all, you're like, oh shit, I'm going to do this. But,
Yeah.
made a very clear point of reaching out to my couples that I'd already booked and being like, here's what's happening and it will not impact your day. Everything that I do, I will do the same for you. It just now I have a kid. So,
Hmm.
and everyone's been so gracious, like especially that first wedding back that I was a little nervous about. That
Hmm.
couple was just like, yep, if you need to take some breaks, take breaks.
Hmm.
If she needs to come here and you need to feed her here on site, please know that's an option. And I think like that's a big part of transitioning into momhood is just like, okay, yeah, people are going to be patient with you. And
Hmm.
so just ask for it.
Hey photographer, do you dream of having a successful elopement photography business but don't know where to start? Imagine having the confidence to double or triple your prices, booking your calendar solid with dream couples and breathtaking locations, and feeling genuinely stoked about your business, your life, and your bank account? Then I'd like to introduce you to Stoked Academy, the go-to membership community for adventure elopement photographers that are ready to scale their businesses to six figures and beyond, all without hustling on social media. In Stoked Academy, you'll get access to everything you need to build a six-figure business, like mastering marketing strategies, pricing for profit, elopement planning, worksheets, templates, spreadsheets, and so much more. Plus, you'll connect with a positive, supportive community of elopement photographers who are as passionate as you are. And the best part? It's insanely affordable, like less than the cost of a new memory card for your camera. Plus, as a member, you'll get to join me for a monthly group coaching call where we dive deep into strategies that will take your business to the next level. If this sounds awesome, then head over to stokedacademy.com to learn more about the membership and join us. I can't wait to see you in there. Yeah, they're not going to be like upset.
No.
At least if you're booking the right people, which I feel like you are, you're booking people who value you and trust you. And so, yeah, they're excited for you and happy
Yeah.
that you're going to be a mom to this cute little baby instead of like,
Yeah.
ugh, you know?
Yeah. I mean, actually, so I didn't get to see it very much because I was still with the couple. But when we were in Iceland, the couple brought their family. I think they were altogether like 15 people.
Hmm.
And they knew about Mika. And some of the daughters were like, can we please meet her? At the last part of the day, and it's windy. Like, Iceland's just kind of crazy.
Hmm.
So Woody's sitting in the back seat with Mika on his lap, and the whole family just like comes to the car and they're like, oh my gosh. And that was just a really warming moment because I was like, yeah, we can do this.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
Yeah,
She's
it
like a
was
little
cool.
celebrity with your
She is.
couples.
She was grinning. Yeah, exactly.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people get worried, so many photographers are women and they worry about like, how am I going to run this business if I want to have kids someday? And I feel like elopement photography is really great for people who want to have families because it can be very flexible, more flexible, I think, than wedding photography, where like you have to do it on the weekends.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to travel all over the place. You are a very accomplished traveler. So if anyone's going to travel with the 4-month-old, I feel like you're a great person to do that. But
Yeah.
especially internationally. But yeah, a lot of people like you don't have to necessarily travel all the time to be an elopement photographer. But do you feel like it's a good career to have as you're having your little baby at home?
I mean, I definitely think that in seeing friends that have more traditional jobs have babies and then compare that to myself, there are some significant pros in the sense of the flexibility and the freedom to kind of set your own schedule. I mean, that's why a lot of us become entrepreneurs anyways for
Mm-hmm.
those two things. So they're enhanced with becoming a mom. And I think that like the destination part is always going to be a little tricky because she's so young. I think it's easier right now to travel with her, but
Mm-hmm.
that very well may change. And that does bring some new challenges that I don't know how we're going to do this yet. But
Yeah.
I will say that I grew up with my family and I are very close. And so I always knew I wanted kids, but those thoughts of like, how am I supposed to do this? Like I'm 34, like I'm not in my 20s. Like, how do I have a kid?
Yeah.
How do I do this? I'm like, I'm so independent. I have this business. I do what I want all the time. How do I
Mm-hmm.
shift to all of a sudden being whatever she needs comes first? So,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of other women that I look to as sort of inspiration, including my own sister and some
Mm-hmm.
cousins and family members and even other photographers that were just like kind of grounding in that moment of like, it will change. And yes, everything is different, but,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels really cliche to say like it's worth it. But I mean, it is. It's just a different
Mm-hmm.
mindset. I did reach out to other people, but then also like set up some workflows and like expectations of trying to manage things. Like I've outsourced blogging and, for a while had someone do like my TikTok because I don't know how TikTok works. I
Yeah.
still don't know how TikTok works, but I had someone do it because I was like, I don't know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was just a matter of like setting a few things up for myself in advance. Like I passed up several couples that I was pretty excited about because I didn't take anything after I was 7 months pregnant and then I
Mm-hmm.
didn't work until 5 weeks after. So there was a solid almost 4 months where, I wasn't working. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't photographing. Like I was doing other things
Yeah.
to set myself up. I think now that the editing is building, that part is going to be hard because it is
Mm-hmm.
difficult to like sit down for an hour and do this. So that's going to be a challenge. I haven't outsourced my editing. I've been terrible. I've like tried to do that so many times. It's just never, I always think of it in
Yeah.
July when I'm like, oh, I should do this. And then all
Yeah.
the editors are totally swamped. So
Mm-hmm. I know that's one of the big things. I'm always like, outsource your editing.
yes. And I do use like narrative and like I use some AI to help me
Mm-hmm.
cull and that definitely speeds things up, but
That's good.
it's definitely I know I need to just do it, Megan, but I keep stalling on
Yeah.
it. I don't know why. Ugh.
That's cute. But yeah, you set
Yeah.
yourself up for success as much as you knew how to. And
Yeah.
if an entrepreneur is anything, we're all problem solvers, So
Definitely.
like whatever is thrown your way, we have to be able to pivot. And a little kid is one of those things that, you don't know what it's like until it gets there. I shouldn't say
Yeah.
it, until she gets there. And
The thing.
the thing, the little blob you birthed,
Yeah, quite. No, the blob.
Yeah. I feel like around 4 months is when they start getting their little personalities, but they are little blobs for a little bit. But yeah, like you problem solve, you figure things out. That's what all small business owners have to do. So why don't we talk about how you booked some Iceland elopements? Because I think anyone listening is probably like, okay, she's a mom. That's cool. But like, how did she book Iceland elopements? 'Cause that's like such a
Yeah.
bucket list thing for so many photographers. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to give mad props to you, Megan, because I attended your workshop there a couple of years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also a place I was really excited about. So when you announced that you were having it, I was like, oh, I'm going. So,
Yeah.
but
That was
honestly,
so fun.
like, yeah, it was. Even though we had like terrible weather one day, it was maybe even more. I don't know, but it was
We had to
blast.
pivot
And
a
even
lot
some of the
that
we
trip.
did pivot a lot. And some of the women from that trip are still like, actually, SB, you photographed her wedding. She just had a kid here and she's a
Yeah.
photographer. So like the world is changing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I've noticed in the world of styled shoots and retreats, which are like exponentially more options now, it just seems like everybody's hosting retreats, and which is fine. There's a lot of opportunity to get content, but I think what he teases me sometimes is like these people, it seems like they're just kind of going on like a vacation and taking pretty pictures, which
Yeah.
is like true. I mean, to some degree, But I think the big thing with what worked for me was the blogging. Like I wrote a really ballin blog on how to elope in Iceland. And I think for a while it ranked. And now that it's been up for a few years and my profiles and websites are highlighting Iceland tremendously
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy to get to. It's easy to get married there. It's like
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. It just sort of folded in really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the couples are finding me on Google. And I think
Yeah.
I have had, blogging is one of those things that it's a slow burn. And
Mm-hmm.
you say this all the time, but like you have to do it now so that in 6 months it means something. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just was on the ball with that, I think right away when that retreat happened. And it also helped that we have those brains that are like, when you're physically in Iceland, you're also like, oh, this could be a really pretty spot for an elopement. Ooh, like
Mm-hmm.
we should tell people to stop here. And like you're constantly scouting anyway.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the sort of bank of knowledge and bank of locations just continues to build, which is why I'm excited about this ring road because everyone goes to Vic
Mm-hmm.
for obvious reasons, but like there's so much more
Oh,
to
yeah. You're
see.
going to the Western Fjords, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I want
We
to do the next
literally,
time I go.
yeah. So I also married a man who has been to more places, more countries than I have, and he's a tremendous planner. He loves
Mm-hmm.
sorting of trips. And so he found this Airbnb that's literally at the end of the road at the Northwest Fjords. And like, that's where the road ends. And it's just out in the middle of nowhere. And I think that's where we're going to stay
I love
for
that.
2 nights or something. So, but yeah, like, constantly like, okay, collecting little tidbits of info and like
Mm-hmm.
sharing that with people. It's very inspiring to see. I know when I see other people post from different, like Patagonia's on my bucket
Mm-hmm.
list of places. It's just like, oh, I want to see those places. And so
Mm-hmm.
sharing it with people and like getting excited about it. That's what it's all about too.
Totally. I feel like that's our love language as elopement photographers is sharing these locations with people
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
finding out about them and being like, "Ooh, I have the perfect locations for you," because yeah, I can't travel anywhere without planning an elopement in my head.
Yeah, I know. And you're always like, ooh, I wish I could find someone to like just take their pictures real quick because this would
Yeah.
be such a cool
Like
spot.
I just want them to stand on that rock right over there.
Yes. Oh, I know. I even have like a few wedding dresses that I keep in my closet, but for this
Mhm.
trip, my elopement is priority. And then I'm just going to try and like not think about work and just try and
Yeah.
enjoy the drive.
Mhm.
Because I mean, also with Mika, with motherhood and stuff, she doesn't have the stamina to like drive for 8 hours. We have
Mhm.
to stop. We have to get her out of her car seat and kind of let her wiggle because
Mhm.
it's brutal to sit for that long anyway as an adult. But for babies, they just get like, ugh, antsy, and
Yeah.
it's a slower pace, which is why
Mhm.
we've given ourselves a little more time also for the experience. But
Mhm.
I'm going to try not to be too focused on working, which,
Yeah.
that's something I hear moms talk about all the time is like trying to be present. And that's
Mhm.
something that even though she's only 4 months old, I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I have a 4 month old,
Yeah.
sit and enjoy this because it's not going to last. And
Mhm. They
so
grow up
that's
quick.
very true.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not a mom, but my niece Iris is like 3.5 years old and she's like talking in full sentences and I've watched her grow up and I'm just like, how is she this little kid already?
I
Like it really
know.
just goes so fast. And seeing my other friends' kids grow up. So yeah, being present, I feel like that's a struggle for all of us because we're always thinking about the future and thinking about our business.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, where can people find you on like Instagram and even TikTok and stuff? Like
Oh
what are
gosh.
your handles?
Yeah. I would say TikTok is one of those places where I like find music and I'm like, yep, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
So my business is Matlai Photography. It's Matlai. And so my Instagram is just Matlai_photography and my website's matlaphotography.com. And I
Awesome.
think it's the same for TikTok. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
if you feel inclined.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and
Yeah.
sharing about the destinations you shoot, sharing about Mika. I hope all the listeners out there are feeling inspired about motherhood and elopement photography. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, Rose.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan. And yes, you can be a mom, be a parent, and have a business. It's totally possible. Don't
Yeah.
let the world tell you that you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Stoked. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring elopement photography content, check us out on Instagram at Megan McPhail. And if you'd like to hear more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you hit six figures as an elopement photographer, then check out my website at www.meganmcphail.com.